RAF intelligence officers joined Whitehall and the Army in spying on COVID lockdown critics. So including David Davis and Peter Hitchens. If they're spying on members of Parliament and ex-ministers and well-known journalists, what do you think they're doing to us? RAF intelligence officers joined a shadowy Whitehall operation accused of spying on members of the public who criticise COVID lockdown policies. So just on social media, what do you think the police are doing to people standing up saying, I've got freedom of speech, freedom of assembly and freedom of expression rights, and I've also got the right not to be tortured or beaten by you, because that would be policy enforcement with violence, which is internationally unlawful. And it comes under UNCAT, United Nations Convention Against Torture. It is an incorporeal right, which means it's a treaty right that was ratified by the British. Here's the key part to it. Incorporated means it was put through Parliament, which was the Criminal Justice Act 1988, Section 134. Section 135 is a illegal, unlawful veto process, which shouldn't exist in international law. Let me just say, everyone listening to this, our case is absolutely nailed on, because when they shut you down, they open the door. So each element they shut down to the case, they open the door to universal jurisdiction, which is what you really want. Because the only way you're going to get a fair hearing is in a universal jurisdiction under UNCAT rules in either United States of America or Russia. Because guess what? Russia prosecutes police and have done for torture. When Russian police officers overstep the mark, they go, that's it. And the law that they use is exactly the same. So Russia prosecutes torture, whilst the British push it under the carpet. No, can't be doing that. 23 people died last year. 19 white working class men and women died last year in England, and over 500 have died since 1988 when UNCAT treaty was incorporated into our law. Not a single prosecution. Now listen to this. In 2018, a law was passed in Parliament which was assaulting an emergency worker. It was brought in for the National Health Service. 20,000 prosecutions, 18,000 of them are police officers that was assaulted. 20,000 prosecutions since 2018 when it was brought in. How many prosecutions do you think there's been? And again, you've got 500 members of the public killed by the police since 1988, and then you've got the ones before that as well. And then the serious assaults. I'm talking about breaking people's legs with their truncheons. I'm talking about smashing people's heads open so that you can see all their brain, right? Not a single case of torture has been brought. Not a single case. And they're trying to suggest that there's no veto. Don't forget, they said that the 77 Brigade and PSYOPs spying on the people was a conspiracy theory. Now they've declared actually it wasn't. We was, yeah. Now they're telling us it weren't just the Army, it was the RAF. Was the Navy doing it as well? And let me just put this to you, everyone listening to this. Do you know how many Royal Navy vessels, all of them, in total, we have got that are out there serviceable at the moment? In other words, operational. Warships, other ships, all ships to do with the Navy. How many are actually operational now? Just think about a fleet of warships that was sent to the Falklands in the 80s. Do you think we could ever mount that again? The answer is no. We have got seven operational warships total. And that's all of them. That's mine destroyers and all that. And now they're putting some in certain places where they're going to get sunk. So we'll have even less. We are being stripped of our defences. Let me just make sure you're all aware of what I'm saying here. Not only ain't we got any warships, all of our operational staff have gone down to virtually zero. When I say virtually zero, considering 350,000, 400,000 troops in the 80s to what we got now, we couldn't fill a stadium. And most of them people are more interested in their hemlines, even the men, than they are as being proper troops. And I'm not disparaging some of them people who are proper. All I'm saying is look round you, and I know they know what I'm saying. When the Polaris system goes out, it has to have an attack sub with it to take care of anything that's going to attack the sub, right? And then I think there's another battleship that's sort of within the vicinity. How many of you know that last week, for example, there was no attack ships or submarines that could be with that Polaris submarine. So therefore, the nuclear deterrent had to stay at base and wasn't out there acting as a nuclear deterrent. So you was completely and utterly defenceless for over a week. And evidently that's a regular occurrence now. This is all being done and sanctioned and allowed by the judiciary because they're working hand in hand with ministers and the ministries of justice, etc., allowing all this to happen. This is not good, people. So again, you all thought that was a conspiracy theory. It definitely isn't. And the psyops against the people is in full swing again. And if you ever thought to yourself, do you think they could be lying? Do you think they could be lying about Russia? Do you think they could be lying about Putin's real intentions? Yeah, they seem to lie about everything else. Do you think they could be lying about that? Donald Tusk is now been made Prime Minister. He's one of the most hated men in Poland. The Polish hate the geezer. He's the most crooked person ever. He's just been made PM. It seems certain people are being put into positions yet again, and it's mainly the crooks. So what happens there? All of a sudden there's something, a skirmish on the border, and he says, right, go in, and then all of a sudden we're dragged into a war. And then they all say, I told you so, the Russians, this is what they intended to do. No, they didn't. You're the people who intended to do it. We're talking about the British. We're not talking about the Scots, the English, the Welsh or the Irish. We're talking about the British establishment. We're talking about the people that have conspired against this country. And this country, I speak of England. We are being destroyed. Then people are still organising nine. Let me say that the right way. Nine regions. Let me give you the German for what I'm telling you now. Nine, right? We don't want 9 regions. We want our counties and our shires back. That's what England wants. We want our distributed governance back. So let me get on to the next part of this. The case of Charles Staples. The case was heard, and I'm going to get on to the arguments with it in a minute. When I say heard, it was listened to, or not listened to. He read the papers and only took notice of what the government was saying. He's completely ignored everything that we've said. Nicholas Lavender, tidy old name for a geezer. The Queen has been pleased to approve the appointment of Mr. Nicholas Lavender, QC. Now, when you go and do research on him, you find out that he is an absolute 100%. You couldn't get any more diversity. Nicholas is deeply concerned about helping people from all backgrounds to come to the bar, and yet at the same time is trying to deal with the problems of numbers. I asked how he could square the circle between a limited number of pupilages and the desire to widen access. Good question, he replied. Nicholas served on one of the first committees which tried to tackle this in the 1990s. Indeed, his wife, Her Honour, Judge Durr, QC, served on the Mountfield Committee, which proposed a levy on the profession to raise additional funds for scholarships. So they backed their own people. I asked about the new rule which obliges barristers to report to the Bar Standards Board if you have reasonable grounds to believe that there has been a serious misconduct by a barrister. Serious misconduct to them means if they turn around and say, listen, I'm not calling him, her. They class that as serious misconduct. You get thrown out for that. Any mention of that. They all now use his, her pronouns on their emails. How do I know that? Because I'm seeing the emails coming in. Let's just go back to these other elements. So it goes in to say, in fact, some 30% of pupils do secure pupilages before they start. His own chambers selves gives awards. But then it says, Nicholas agrees that the bar seems to have solved the gender and even the ethnicity issues entry. They're not interested in whether you're good at the job. They're just interested in one, if you're female, non-female, bi, whatever, binary or other. And if you're black, brown, then we want... Doesn't matter if you're very good at the job. That's not the issue here. What's the issue here is the colour of your skin and your pronouns or your sexuality. As if that's got anything to do with the law whatsoever. I've got the emails where they're using their pronouns. but there is still the retention issue. Let me just say to all of you listening to this, they've got a retention issue in the legal professional. That means people go into the profession and go, fuck this, and leave. Now, imagine the same thing happening in the police. People that join the police, and I know quite a few people have done this, they join the police thinking they're going to help the community and they're peacemakers and this is what they're going to do. And then when they see the other people in there and what's going on, they go, fuck that, I don't want nothing to do with this, I'm out. So the police haven't got retention. Now, what happens in them cases is the only people you retain are the bad people that can't get a fucking job anywhere else. Or there's a specific reason. In other words, they have an agenda and they're pushing their agenda, whether it be pronouns, whether it be diversity, whether it be communism. And there's plenty of Marxist communist judges in the High Court and throughout the legal profession. It's almost like the Politburo in that place. And I'm not kidding you. So all I'm saying to you is that information's there. Now, they're also saying in here, the Criminal Bar Association, others, they have elections to elect chairmen and all that. They're saying she expressed concern at the fact that only 8% of the Criminal Bar Association members had voted in their last leadership election. What does that tell you? The reason why they're not electing anyone is because the candidates that are putting up, they're all the wrong candidates, and everyone in the group is saying, we're not happy with it. When do we actually get a good judge? I'm not sure if we ever will. Let me go on to the next element of this. This is his wife, right? So Mr. Justice Lavender is the person who, on paper, viewed this case. Her Honour, Judge Anuja Dur, KC, was one of the speakers at the annual conference of the EU Forum. By the way, both of these, so they're married. They met on some committee where they're trying to get money for pupillage. They're both associated with the European Union. Just make sure I'm expressing that to you. You understand what I'm saying? They're both associated with that. Annual conference of the EU Forum of Legal Professions in December 22. The event was organised... So again, was that in the middle of lockdown? The event was organised by the Academy of European Law. So the ERA, remember, there was a previous case with Robin Tilbrook, and it turned out all the judges were part of another European Union legal bar system where they were told that you need to propagate European Union law. So in her speech entitled Race to the Bench, an overview of judicial appointments, she spoke about diversity in the judicial profession, exploring issues like recruitment and retention, and how to make sure the judiciary reflects society. What do you mean reflects society? You're using pronouns. Most of society are not interested in pronouns. They're not interested in dating trans women, which are actually geezers with wigs on, because most men are straight. In other words, they like women. That is someone with a cervix and a nice ass, a pair of tits, they bend her over the sink and away we go, right? They're not interested in fucking geezers. This is disgusting to me, that our judiciary is so involved in this. And when I say so involved, I mean it's absolutely disgusting. Judge Dur is also a commissioner with the Judicial Appointments Commission. Fuck me! In her speech, she gave an overview of the selection process, including recruitment issues, JAC faces, and how that affects diversity. Let me just tell you all, are you all listening to this? She's Scottish. We got a case where we're putting English constitutional rights, an Englishman being tortured on the streets of London. She's Scottish. Like, she originates from India. I know she don't come from the Orkney Islands or the Shetland Islands or the islands of Scotland of her ancestry, but I'm going to play you this.
When I was studying for my bar finals in 1989, I went to a reception and I noticed on the guest list there was a member of the Supreme Court. So I went up to him and I introduced myself. And I was dressed in a sari because it was an Indian event, and I'm used to wearing traditional clothes. And he said to me, "And which part of India do you come from?" Perfectly politely, of course, but he just made the assumption that I was on a holiday from India. And I said to him, I come from Scotland and I'm studying for the bar exams.
I told him I come from Scotland. You're standing there in a fucking sari. You ain't got a fucking kilt on, have you? Are you dressed in typical Scottish attire, cultural attire? No! You've got a fucking sari on! What do you think he's going to fucking say to you? Does she look in a sari, standing in any group of people, standing in a sari, does she look like a fucking Scot to you? Tell me what you would do. It's unbelievable. I could go through the rest of this, and don't forget, they're all tied to the European Union. Remember what they're doing at the moment. The only reason they brought back in David Cameron as a Lord is because he's tying up now to make sure that we go into the command and control process of the European Union for control of a combined army. And what they're trying to do with that, they want control. So they want the individual countries, including the UK, as they call the country, but they want us to fund it, the military-industrial complex, and then they will say, right, well, now you've got to go and fight because it's under the control of these people and that's what you're going to do. We voted to leave. And that means also leave that... Can you all see that one there? Can you see that one there? EUR? EUR. See it? The European Union Justice System. That's who these people are. That's what you're up against, an administrative system that's completely crooked. So now what we're going to do is go back down again, hopefully. Right, here we go. So I'm going to show you this. Now, we're expecting this. But the point is, there is appeal points on here. They're trying to shut us down completely. By doing so, they open the door to universal jurisdiction. We're expecting this. The King's Bench in High Court of Justice, King's Bench Division, Administrative Court. The King, on application of Charles Edward Staple and Solicitor General. There's an argument that this is wrong. And there's a specific reason for it, because it was the Attorney General that the Criminal Justice Act of 1988, Section 135, states categorically it's the Attorney General. So again, here it is, and it says notification of the judge's decision on the application for permission to apply for judicial review, right? Following the consideration, Order Honourable Mr Justice Lavender, he's the geezer I just showed you, married to that bird, right? And they're both European Union lawyers, solicitors. They want the whole of this system going back into administrative law. There's a reason why it's important. The Solicitor General is substituted as a defendant. The application for permission to apply for judicial review is refused. The application is certified. He has certified it as totally without merit. Now, they brought that in to strike out cases of political asylum seekers who were just abusing the system. And now they have turned that on normal, everyday people so they can kick a case out and no one looks at it because they think this is a load of bollocks. And it isn't a load of bollocks. A case is a good case. They're now charging us, or charging Charles, £4,471.30 for telling him fuck off. Paragraph 4 of the above final costs, and then you've got to go in and do it. So the reasons... the Solicitor General is the appropriate defendant because he took the decision to refuse the consent to the proposed prosecution. He wasn't allowed to do that. And it wasn't him who did it. It was someone called Daniel who never gave his last name. That was all in the case. He's ignored all of that. The decision is not amenable to judicial review. See R. Solicitor Taylor. That, again, is incorrect. If you know what that case is about, Charles has private right and special damage. And secondly, and this is really important, because they brought it in to the law, the statute, right, that means it's judicial reviewable. It's no longer a prerogative once you bring it under statute. So that case is irrelevant. He's not even listening. He hasn't even read our case. I can tell you that now. He ain't even read the case. That's how bad this geezer is. That's not justice, people. That's them people thinking they can do what the fuck they like. And if they get away with this, I'm telling you now, 23 people died last year. You're going to see that increase. You're going to see the rapes and the murders, and you're going to see asylum seekers committing these offences. In other words, the people invading this country, and everything will be swept under the carpet because there is no one at the top that's going to stop it. There's a couple of other bits in there they've put on there. Most of it, and the application for permission is so misconceived as to be totally without. So he hasn't explained. So why is it misconceived? Let me just make sure we're clear on this. You've got a video for 20 to 30 minutes of the police doing it. You've got a previous court case where the judge has put... Let me just make sure we're on a 3-day jury trial. A judge put to the jury, if you believe this is torture, you must find him not guilty. You've got a unanimous not guilty. They all see the evidence, the video, and a witness statement from the victim describing the whole thing. He ain't took any of that into consideration. He has just dismissed the case. And you know why? Because they have a veto on torture. And that's why they're opening the door to universal jurisdiction. Again, I'm not going to give up. I'll never give up. Right? Never, ever surrender. These people are crooks. You can't elect judges. They're not electable. And they get a tap on the shoulder because they'll do as they're told. Or they've been videoed somewhere fucking some kid. That's why they're controllable. These people are not good people. They are the most arrogant people I've ever fucking met. By the way, we went to that Selden Society do the Inns Court. Listen to Lady House, all on video. It's actually online now, what she said. She went right the way through it, right? Guess what they've cut out? The question. Why would they do that, people? Why would they cut out the question? This was originally all put in place to control the empire. Now all of a sudden their empire is crumbling. They come back to us. England is the economy. What have the British got if they ain't got England? Nothing. If we was to take back England tomorrow, what have the British got? All you've got to do is take out the Acts of Union. And the Scots could do it within a week. I've said they could do it within 48 hours. If they was actually patriotic Scots, they would know. And instead... they repeat the bullshit, and it is bullshit, that the British have trained their thinkers in. Oh, you must abide by this law and you must go to the Supreme Court. No, you don't need to do that. You just need to reverse the process. There was no referendum for us or them to go into the treaty. The Acts of Union was done on a show of hands in the Scottish Parliament and the English Parliament. You just reverse the process. Done. Bang. See you later. That's all they got to do. And any Scot, SNP, Albert, anyone MP that ever says to me, we need to ask and we need to take this to international court with the Supreme Court. No. All you need to do is recall your Westminster MPs, and it must be the Westminster MPs. You reopen Holyrood as a national parliament, sovereign parliament. You reopen it as that, not as an assembly, not as a devolved parliament, but as a national sovereign parliament. You reopen it. All of your Westminster MPs, not the other lot, just the Westminster MPs sitting there, and you say to them, what is your vote? Yes or no? Yes. Do you want to void, because it is officially a court in law, the national parliament. So do you want to vote to void the Acts of Union, or the Act of Union for Scotland? It goes on a majority. A majority doesn't have to be unanimous, a majority decision. So if 60% of them said yes, bang, void, that's it, end of, union's over. We're Scotland. They notify the United Nations. England is back to being England, but we've got to take it back from the politicians and from the military-industrial complex and all the other lobbyists that are controlling, including BlackRock and the others, right? Then we've got to purge the judges from the system. Then we turn around to the Welsh and say, listen, Wales, we love you to bits. You're a common law jurisdiction. Do you want to stay with England, or do you want to be completely independent? But if you carry on with your airport and your ports and you want to get all these people coming in to cross the border into England, there's going to be a fucking great big wall, and we won't do any deals or trade with you. What do you want to do? That's all we're going to say to the Welsh. I love the Welsh. I love their culture. I love the Scots. I love their culture. I take the piss out of them. But that's what we all do to each other. We mickey take. That's part of our sense of humour in Scotland as well. I absolutely love Scotland. And what's gone on with that country and the abuse of that country by socialists, communists and Nazis, because the SNP were Nazis, they was having a deal with the Nazis against the English. Just remember that. All I'm trying to do is get the message out to you and people to understand. People who may think they're British, you're not British. You're either English, Scottish, Welsh or Irish. Get the British establishment out of that nut, because it is the biggest psyop ever in the world. And it has spread its cancer all over the world, and we need to take this country back and take it back for the people.